Hi, good afternoon, everybody. It's Tuesday, May 9th. It's about 5 o'clock p.m. This is a meeting of the Recreation and Parks Committee. To my right is Mrs. Oda. To my left is Mr. Tremblay. I am Brock Heath as the chair. Looks like we've got a few items to cover. Mr. Titterington, do you mind going through the first one?
Sure.
Thanks.
The first one is a recommendation or request of the committee to recommend to council that I be authorized to sign non-ticketed use agreements for two events at Treasure Island Park this summer. One, they're both concerts, one on June 24th and the other one on August 5th. They would include the controlled consumption of alcohol. They would be run operationally the same as they were last year. Council did authorize, in that case, 3 events last year. These have been approved for recommendation to forward to you by the Recreation Board as well as the Board of Park Commissioners.
Thank you. Do you need approval from council for every event that's going to be happening down there, or is it only if there's alcohol?
No, it's only the alcohol.
Okay.
As part of last year's discussion with Parks and with the council, we do have a standard use form. Mm-hmm. The Park Board will approve those kind of uses.
Okay.
But when it comes to alcohol, it does go to the council because we do have a law in place, and it does require the Recreation Board to get temporary liquor permits.
Okay. And if I remember correctly, I think the past events that we've had here with alcohol has been no event, no issues at all.
No issues at all, that's
right.
correct.
Right. Thank you. Anybody on the committee have questions? Mrs. Oda?
I have no questions.
Good to go.
I just had a comment from the very first one we had last year. I was surprised at how smooth it ran, and I'm sure that having 3 events last year was a lot of learning went on.
Well, it helps that the arena staff actually run the alcohol process, and they're well versed in it, well trained in it from their doing the same at the arena.
I think they've gone through classes, and there are different scenarios that they've got to work through, so they're pretty good at it. It's nice to know that they're helping out or even in charge of that.
Right. And we are asking for emergency legislation because of the pending June 24th concert and the work that we have to do to apply for the permits.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from other city council members? Mrs. President, or looks like the mayor's back there. Good to go? Okay. Any other questions from anyone else in the audience? Seeing none, how would you like to move forward?
I'd like to move forward with emergency.
With emergency? Mm-hmm. It looks like it's unanimous from the committee here to move forward with emergency. Thanks.
Second item?
Yep.
The second item is that we are asking council to authorize me to enter into a professional services agreement with Alt Architecture for the design of improvements to the Miami Shores Golf Course Clubhouse. Our request is at a cost not to exceed $80,000, which is what was quoted by the architecture firm. The clubhouse was designed and constructed in the late 40s. There have been some renovations to it, first in '54 and then in the mid 1980s. However, since that time, nothing really of any substance has been done. Last year, doesn't have a date, but I believe it was last year or the year before even, we did request an architect to come through and do an analysis of the condition. She identified that while the skeleton of the building is in very good shape, the mechanicals, the electrical system, the HVAC, the restrooms, the roof, kitchen area, virtually everything inside is out of date, in need of repair, and there's a lot of potential that we're missing ultimately if we don't do those needed repairs. We had this discussion in in November of last year when we discussed the 2017 budget. $115,000 was included, or is included in the capital improvement fund of this year's budget. Again, we are only asking for $80,000. However, there may be some secondary work that we may want to do, some structural analysis that may be outside the scope of the architect contract. That gap between the 80 and the 115, it may not be 35,000, but we're confident that the architecture contract at $80,000 would be sufficient. And of course, if it's not, we'll come back to you and ask for an increase before we spend anything over the 80,000. We did follow the state process, going out for RFPs. We had 4 architect firms, 4, that came in and interviewed and gave us their references and their experience. And from that, the staff is recommending all architecture. Mrs. Knight passed out thanks to Ken Green, the superintendent of golf, or director of golf, or guru of golf, whatever you want to call it, whatever that funny game is, however that's played. The 2017 tournament and event schedule at the Shores, I think you'll see that the schedule is full. If you compare this, I didn't think to ask for prior years, but I think if you compare this to the past several years, this is a very full schedule. It does get major use, but we do need, this is a city-owned building. It is in need of significant update. We are not asking at this point to do any kind of construction work. The first step of that is to get these detailed design documents done so we have a better idea of what it would cost. And then we would assess our ability to do those repairs and renovations and come back to you either later this year or as part of the discussion for the 2018 budget. Again, this is only to do the design work.
I think that was one of my questions, is that you have an idea as far as the time frame, how long these guys take to get back, and then nothing would even start until 2018. We'd have to come back, review.
I don't see that on here. Did they give us, Christie, the amount of time it would take them to do the...
I think we were thinking that we would have enough sufficient data by the time budget time.
Okay. That was what I was
Right.
concerned about. Are we going to know how much to put into the budget if it even makes sense? And I guess until we get that information, we don't know if the clubhouse is going to be down during construction. That all comes later. We determine that.
We would try to phase any renovation work on the off-season as much as possible. I'm sure there would be some temporary, discomfort, if you will, for
Right.
golfers. But again, that's a discussion if and when we get to the point of actually asking for the construction authorization, bidding authorization.
And not to bring up maybe a sore spot for some people, but Operation Recreation went down. Was this part of that, the
This
study
would have been
itself?
part of that, but again, as when we spoke during the 2017 budget discussions, I noted specifically this request, the 115,000, and stated at that time, and I'll reiterate again, that this is one of our buildings. We do need to either, consider the long-term operations of the golf course, which we are in no way recommending any changes except for enhancements to. But we do need to take care of our buildings, much like we had the same type of discussion with the Marina building out at Treasure Island. And so because that is a priority, because there is the need, we asked for the design money in the budget separate from Operation Recreation.
Okay. And especially if we're talking electrical, there can be major issues there.
Electrical,
Fires.
HVAC.
Yeah, those are serious items. Are there any questions from the committee? Mrs. Oda?
I have a question. Patrick, if Operation Recreation had gone through, what were the plans for the golf course? Basically the same thing?
The same thing, if you looked at the financial pro forma that was included with Operation Recreation, we actually had this money included as the city's contribution towards that initiative.
The 115,000?
The 115, yes. The construction money was part of, was listed below as one of the projects. But we had already anticipated making these expenses out of our capital funds.
So the golf course was in the works regardless of what happened with Operation
That was our
Recreation?
recommendation at the at budget time, yes. The only additional item that is not included with this study and possibly, depending on how the financials work out, with any construction bidding recommendation later, that was in the Operation Recreation Initiative list, is the driving range.
That was $1 million in the Operation Recreation?
In that range, yes.
Do we know if that's what we're looking at?
We don't and won't. We'll get a better estimate with this work, a much better estimate.
I had a good tour out at the golf course yesterday with Ken. Very much appreciated and helped me to see what we were looking at. So it was very good.
And you saw needs while you were out there.
I saw old. Yeah, and outdated.
Perfect. Thank you. Mr. Tremblay?
My only question is, the design information we would get would be sufficient that we could actually put it out for bids?
It should be.
It'd be down to the-
We would probably have to craft it in our format,
Right.
but we'll work with the architect as they go along.
It won't be an estimate at that point. We'll know exactly what we want to have.
Well, it will be an estimate, but it'll be a lot more fine-tuned
Yes.
to the point where we can then give an engineer's estimate as part of a bid document for construction.
And it doesn't say anything about emergency on here.
It does not.
You're not asking for emergency then?
No, there's no need for it.
I would ask, people are going to wonder why we're not using Candy Goodall as the architect. Ken explained that yesterday, and I think it'd be helpful for people to know why we're not using a local architect.
Well, I don't believe that she submitted for this phase, did she? She did, yeah, she was not one of the four that submitted to be considered.
I think people should know that it's not, we're
Oh,
not
yeah,
just
no, we
stepping
didn't-
around
right,
her.
No, we did not consider this any kind of conflict because she had done earlier work. As a matter of fact, her familiarity might have lent something. I think there were some requirements that maybe she didn't want to have to deal with administratively that are pretty standard given our insurance pool,
Right.
but that was her choice.
Good. Anything more from the committee?
Nope.
Are there any questions from any other members? Mayor? Yes, sir. Please approach and state your name and address.
Okay, Tom Kendall, 937 Terry Drive in First Ward City Council. I just want to say from my perspective, we need to really look at this project. We as a city are sitting on a gem out there. I mean, it's a Donald Ross design course, which is amongst the golf community really means something. I mean, he has designed some of the courses where major tournaments are held with the professional ranks, and we're lucky to have a course that was designed by him in our little city. The facilities are old. Ken and his crew has done a great job, and prior to him, the former pros have done a good job in keeping the clubhouse running and keeping it as up to date as they possibly can. But while he is having a lot of outings, one of the things that that you'll find in the golf world is that if you want to have more of the outings and the bigger outings, you need a place where people can go and they can have their luncheons and dinners afterwards and to give out awards. And we need something like that in our community. So for a lot of people coming to Troy, that is one of the few things they may see of Troy is that clubhouse, because we have a lot of people coming from outside of Miami County to play our course here. So I am definitely in favor of supporting that project and going forward with it to the point where then we can look at potential construction down the road. So, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Kendall. Appreciate your comments. Madam President, Mayor, anything back there? Good to go? Anyone else from the audience? Okay, I don't see any. How would you like to move forward? Yes, ma'am.
I will say, Ken pointed out that they're having an increasing number of bikers who stop. And he said they haven't tracked that. That would really be interesting to know how many people are coming off the bike path to eat in the snack shop and anyhow.
Yeah, makes sense.
That's another area.
I'm going to adopt your idea on that too. Put a sign book out there and have them, when bikers come in to sign that for us, where they're from and the date that they sign in.
That'll be fun to see.
So we can get some kind of an idea of what kind of numbers we're talking about.
Sure.
Nice. That's a great idea. And there's a little spot to put in for kayaks there as well. I think I've thrown mine in there. So, good. You have all kinds of neat traffic coming through, sounds like, so. Good. Any other questions from anyone? How would you like to move forward, committee? Move forward?
I would move forward, yes.
Yeah, it looks like we're unanimous to move forward as recommended. Anything else to come before us? Yeah, we're going to be adjourned then. Thank you.